Ethan Carter stepped off the transport shuttle onto the surface of Zithera, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. The world before him was unlike anything he had ever seen. Massive cities floated in the sky, their shining towers reflecting the sunlight in shimmering colors. Strange, luminous plants grew everywhere, swaying gently in a breeze that carried scents of flowers and minerals he had never encountered. In the distance, creatures with sleek, iridescent bodies moved gracefully, their wings catching the light as they glided over the ground. Everything about Zithera felt alive, as if the planet itself was aware of his presence. Ethan adjusted the strap of his backpack and looked around. He was not here on a diplomatic mission, nor was he a soldier on assignment. He was a simple explorer, curious about alien civilizations and eager to learn. Still, curiosity alone had not prepared him for the reality of walking among a people whose very existence seemed to blend art, technology, and strength in ways humans could hardly imagine. As he made his way into the capital city, the streets bustled with alien life. Zitherans of all shapes and sizes moved with precision and confidence. Their bodies were lean and powerful, their movements practiced and fluid. Some carried long, curved weapons that gleamed in the sun. Others wore armor that shimmered with embedded light patterns, signaling rank and family lineage. Ethan felt a twinge of nervousness. If any of these beings were to challenge him, he would have no weapons and little chance of defending himself in a traditional fight. But he pushed the thought aside. He had survived worse on his own world, and his instincts had never failed him. He wandered through a busy market, marveling at the alien architecture and the colors around him. Stalls displayed strange fruits that pulsed gently, fabrics that seemed to float on invisible currents, and mechanical gadgets that moved as if they had a mind of their own. Ethan approached one stall where a Zitheran was arranging small, glowing spheres in a pattern on a table. "Greetings," Ethan said cautiously, unsure of the proper customs. The alien looked up with large, bright eyes and a nod. Ethan noticed a subtle smile forming. Communication here was not as difficult as he feared. Gestures and expressions seemed universal in some ways. Suddenly, a commotion erupted nearby. A group of Zitherans was arguing loudly, their voices sharp and quick. Ethan's curiosity drew him closer. As he approached, he realized the argument was turning physical. One Zitheran pushed another, who retaliated with a swift, practiced strike. The fight escalated and more warriors joined in. The crowd began to cheer and shout, some encouraging, some alarmed. Ethan's heart raced. He had no weapons, no training in alien martial arts, yet something inside him refused to stay back. As one fighter lunged toward a smaller, weaker Zitheran, Ethan instinctively stepped forward. He grabbed the attacker's arm, twisting and using his own body weight to unbalance him. His movements were crude compared to the fluidity of the Zitherans, but they were unexpected and effective. The attacker stumbled and fell, tripping over a market stall, while Ethan managed to shield the smaller Zitheran from harm. A hush fell over the immediate area. The crowd stared, some in disbelief, some in laughter at the unorthodox human tactics. Ethan realized he had done it. Without weapons, without formal training, he had protected someone using only instinct and raw determination. High above the market, in a balcony overlooking the scene, stood Princess Kailara. She had been observing the crowd, expecting to see ordinary skirmishes among her people, nothing unusual, but her eyes widened as she watched Ethan move. There was something about the way he acted, bold, unflinching, and entirely human. He fought not with aggression or pride, but with a strange combination of courage, ingenuity, and a calm focus she found mesmerizing. Kailara whispered to herself, her voice barely audible even to the wind. "I wish he was my husband." The words startled her even as they left her lips. She had never felt this way before. A human far from his world had done something none of her warriors could achieve in that moment, and she could not look away. Ethan straightened, noticing the silence around him. The smaller Zitheran he had saved looked up and gave a grateful nod, eyes wide with admiration. Ethan nodded back, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. He had always believed courage was measured not by strength, but by the willingness to act in the face of danger. This planet, he realized, might teach him lessons he had never expected. The fight began to dissolve as the Zitherans regained composure. Some of the warriors laughed, acknowledging Ethan's unexpected skill. Others muttered in surprise, trying to understand how a human could manage what they themselves struggled to do. Ethan, still catching his breath, felt a sense of exhilaration. He had entered this world as a stranger, and yet in a few moments he had earned attention, perhaps respect. Kaylara continued to watch him, fascinated. She noticed the subtle ways he adapted, using his environment, thinking several steps ahead and never relying on brute force. His hands moved quickly, but not recklessly, as if he could sense the exact motion needed at the right time. This human with no formal training had become a puzzle she wanted to understand. She had always admired warriors, but there was something about Ethan's approach that was entirely different, entirely human and entirely captivating. After the commotion, Ethan tried to move away, feeling the eyes of the entire market on him. But Kaylara was already issuing orders to her aides. She wanted to meet this human, to learn more about him, to understand how someone so ordinary in appearance could display such extraordinary courage. She commanded that he be escorted safely to the palace for further observation. Ethan, unaware of her influence, was politely guided by Zitharan aides through winding streets filled with floating vehicles, hovering gardens and bridges made of transparent materials. He marveled at everything, but he could not shake the feeling that something significant had just begun. This world was more than strange sights and curious technology. It had people who could be dangerous, people who could be brilliant, and one princess whose gaze made him feel like he had already been noticed for reasons he could not yet understand. When they reached the palace, Kaylara was waiting in a grand hall adorned with sculptures and glowing panels that reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. Ethan felt nervous, but he held himself with the same composure he had used in the market. The princess descended from her elevated position, walking toward him with a grace that was both commanding and gentle. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow to the two of them. "You," she said, her voice clear and melodic, "are not like the others." Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. He nodded politely, feeling the weight of her gaze and the curiosity in her tone. Kaylara smiled faintly. "You have courage. You have ingenuity. I want to understand this human way of fighting. Tell me your name." "Ethan Carter," he said, keeping his tone steady. "I'm an explorer. I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You caused no trouble," Kaylara replied. "You showed something our warriors rarely demonstrate: creativity, calm, and bravery without arrogance. Stay here. I wish to learn more about you." As Ethan looked around the hall, he realized he was far from home. Yet something about this world, this strange alien planet, felt like the beginning of an adventure, unlike any he had experienced. He could not know what challenges awaited him, but he felt ready. If nothing else, he had proven to himself, and now to the eyes of a warrior princess, that humanity's courage could shine even on distant worlds. And in the balcony above, Kaylara lingered for a moment, watching him settle into the palace. She did not know why, but she felt a pull toward this human, as if fate itself had brought him to Zithara. His hands, his mind, his heart, so entirely human, had left an impression she could not ignore. For the first time in her life, she wondered if strength and valor might exist in forms she had never imagined, and if perhaps the greatest adventure was not in battles won, but in hearts discovered. Ethan sat in a simple chamber provided for him, gazing out at the floating city. He felt a mixture of anticipation and wonder. Every decision he had made today, every instinct he had followed, had brought him here. He could not yet comprehend the depth of this new world, the challenges ahead or the influence he might have, but he felt a quiet certainty. Courage and heart mattered everywhere, even among the stars. And somewhere above, Kaylara whispered again, almost to herself, "I wish he was my husband." Ethan awoke early the next morning to the soft glow of Zithara's twin suns streaming through the tall windows of the chamber he had been given. The palace was quiet, save for the faint hum of machinery and the distant chatter of guards moving through the hallways. Despite the grandeur around him, Ethan felt more focused than overwhelmed. The events of the previous day played in his mind repeatedly: the fight in the market, the astonished faces of the Zitharans, and most of all the warrior princess Kaylara, whose gaze had lingered on him longer than anyone's had before. Soon a knock echoed through the chamber. Before Ethan could respond, the door slid open, revealing a young aide of the princess, their violet skin glinting faintly in the sunlight. "Ethan Carter," the aide said politely. "Princess Kaylara wishes to see you. You are to begin your trials today." Ethan rose, adjusting the strap of his backpack instinctively. "Trials?" He had anticipated curiosity, perhaps questions, but trials suggested something more. Serious still, he nodded. "I'll be ready." The aide led him through the palace corridors, where walls shimmered with animated holographic art depicting the history of Zithera. Scenes of warriors, great battles, and royal ceremonies flowed across the panels, illustrating a culture that valued skill, strategy, and honor above all. Ethan felt a pang of awe and nervousness. He was a human among beings bred for combat, and yet he had survived the market scuffle. Perhaps he thought this would test not only his body but also his mind. Kaylara awaited him in a large chamber, open to the sky, where floating platforms hovered over a courtyard. Her armor gleamed softly, not in the aggressive way of soldiers preparing for war, but in the elegant way of a leader ready to observe and guide. She regarded him with a curious intensity. "Ethan," she said, "your actions yesterday were remarkable. Humans are unpredictable, and that is both dangerous and admirable. I wish to understand how you approach challenges. You will undergo a series of trials designed to test your courage, intellect, and adaptability. If you succeed, you will earn not just respect, but a place among those who inspire my people." Ethan swallowed, nodding. "I will do my best." Kaylara gestured to the first platform, which lowered slowly toward the courtyard below. "Your first trial is the Labyrinth of Shadows. It is not a place of physical danger alone, but one that tests perception, creativity, and calmness under pressure. Enter and let your mind guide you as much as your body." The labyrinth stretched out before him, a network of twisting corridors, shifting walls, and subtle traps. Ethereal lights glimmered on the floor, hinting at pathways, while soft whispers from unseen speakers created an eerie atmosphere. Ethan stepped cautiously onto the platform and descended. As soon as he entered the labyrinth, the walls shifted behind him, closing off the entrance. Ethan paused, taking a deep breath. He had navigated caves, forests, and ruins on his home planet, and he knew instinct often outweighed planning. He studied the faint glows on the floor, noticing patterns in their flickers. One path seemed steadier, another flickered uncertainly. Trusting his instincts, he followed the steadier path. Almost immediately, he encountered his first challenge, a floor panel that seemed unstable, threatening to collapse if too much weight was applied. Ethan crouched, testing it with a foot. When he felt a slight give, he leapt to the next panel, adjusting his balance in midair. His bare hands gripped edges when necessary, muscles straining as he moved quickly yet carefully. In a moment, he was past the trap, heart pounding with exhilaration. The next challenge required more than agility. A series of doors appeared, each marked with strange alien symbols that seemed to shift when he looked away. Ethan knew he could not guess blindly. He remembered something from the market. Patterns in Zetheran design often repeated in art, technology, and architecture. He studied the symbols, comparing shapes and curves, and soon realized a sequence based on symmetry. He pressed the doors in that order, and one slid open, revealing a wide corridor bathed in soft light. Minutes, or perhaps hours, passed. Time in the labyrinth seemed to stretch. Ethan faced a puzzle that required him to align beams of light to reflect onto a central crystal. He had no knowledge of Zetheran optics, yet he observed, tested, and adapted. His human intuition led him to adjust angles slowly, noticing small changes as light moved across surfaces. Eventually, a soft chime indicated success and a hidden door opened, leading him to a higher platform. Kaylara watched his progress from above, hidden but ever observant. She noted how Ethan did not panic, how he treated the environment as a tool rather than a threat. His success was not in brute strength or pre-learned skill, but in thinking, adapting, and remaining calm. A faint smile curved her lips. "Remarkable," she whispered. "The human mind is unpredictable yet brilliant." After exiting the labyrinth, Ethan barely had time to catch his breath before the next trial. Kaylara led him to a large arena where holographic projections of enemy warriors appeared. "This is the trial of reflexes and strategy," she explained. "You will face illusions designed to test timing, perception, and decision-making. Use what you have learned, not weapons." The projections moved with speed and precision, striking at him from multiple directions. Ethan dodged, weaved, and parried using only his hands, anticipating patterns in their movement. Sometimes he would feint, causing the projection to overextend, then use their own momentum to push them aside. The holograms reacted unpredictably, yet Ethan adapted. He noticed how the projections responded to aggression, hesitation, and rhythm, adjusting his strategy constantly. Kalara's admiration grew. She had trained warriors for decades, yet she had never seen such a combination of instinct and creativity. Even when the simulations became more complex, Ethan remained composed, observing, calculating, and responding in ways that were unusual, yet effective. She could not help but feel that perhaps humans had a quality that Zitherans, despite all their skill, often overlooked: the ability to improvise under pressure. After what felt like endless sequences, the holograms finally dissolved, leaving Ethan standing, sweat on his brow, but a sense of triumph in his heart. He had relied entirely on himself, not on tools, not on technique learned through years, but on thinking, observation, and courage. "You did well," Kalara said, stepping forward. "Your human mind is extraordinary. Few Zitherans could adapt so quickly to situations they have never seen. You are not only brave, Ethan, but also clever." Ethan nodded, grateful for the compliment, yet feeling a mixture of humility and pride. "I just try to pay attention. Observe what's happening and act. That's all I've ever done." Kalara studied him, her eyes softening. "It is rare to see someone act purely from understanding rather than pride or fear. That is why I am curious about you." The next trial required Ethan to climb the spire of a floating tower. The surface was smooth, almost glass-like, but dotted with small grips and ledges. At first glance, it seemed impossible. Yet Ethan approached it logically. He observed the pattern of the ledges, testing weight distribution and angles. He climbed steadily, careful and deliberate, using his hands and feet with precision, occasionally pausing to assess the next move. Other warriors might have rushed, relying on strength, but Ethan's patience and observation allowed him to ascend where many would fail. At the summit, he found Kalara waiting, standing against the backdrop of Zithara's glowing sky. She extended her hand in acknowledgement. "You have succeeded in all your trials, Ethan. Not because you are the strongest, but because you think, adapt, and act with courage. That is what my people value most, yet rarely see in one who is not trained from birth." Ethan, breathing heavily, smiled. "Thank you. I learned a lot. About observation, about thinking ahead, and I think I learned a bit about bravery, too." Kalara's eyes softened. She stepped closer, her gaze intense but kind. "You have shown qualities that inspire even the strongest warriors here. That is rare, Ethan, and perhaps that is why I feel drawn to you. You are not like anyone I have ever met." Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. The connection he felt with her was surprising, yet he sensed sincerity in her words. I am honored," he said finally. As they descended from the tower, Kalara led Ethan to a quiet garden within the palace. Strange, glowing plants surrounded them, and small streams of crystal-clear water flowed gently. Birds with metallic feathers flitted among the branches. Ethan took a deep breath, letting the serene atmosphere calm him. "You have changed how I see courage," Kalara said softly. "Not all strength comes from skill or training. Sometimes it comes from heart, from the willingness to act when others hesitate. Humans, perhaps you have a gift we do not often recognize." Ethan smiled. "I think everyone has courage. Sometimes it's just hidden until the moment comes." Kalara studied him, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I will remember this day, Ethan. Not just for your trials, but for showing me that even an outsider can shine brighter than the best of us." As the sun began to set, painting the sky with streaks of orange and violet, Ethan realized that his journey on Zithara had only just begun. He had proven himself in the eyes of one of the most formidable warriors in the galaxy, yet he knew there were greater challenges ahead. Challenges that would test not only his mind and courage, but also his heart. Ethan awoke to the soft hum of the palace, but today, the atmosphere felt different. Even before he left his chamber, he sensed a tension in the air. Zithara, despite its beauty and elegance, had always carried the weight of responsibility and vigilance. Kalara had requested his presence earlier than usual, and aides whispered among themselves as he walked the polished corridors. He found Kalara in the central council chamber, standing before a large holographic map that displayed the floating cities of Zithara and the surrounding space. Her usual calm demeanor was tinged with concern. "Ethan," she said without turning, "we have a problem. A rogue faction has been detected beyond the northern rings. They are technologically advanced, faster and more cunning than any we have faced recently. They seek to disrupt the peace of Zithara and challenge our people's way of life. Ethan stepped closer, studying the holographic images. The rogue faction's ships were sleek and silent, moving in formations that suggested experience and strategy. He nodded slowly. "What's our first step?" Kilara finally looked at him, her eyes sharp. "We must protect the city. Our warriors are prepared, but I want you with me. Your adaptability and unconventional thinking may be what tips the balance. You will not fight with weapons unless absolutely necessary. Trust in your instincts as you did during the trials." Ethan's heart pounded. This was far beyond the controlled environment of the trials. This was real danger. He swallowed his fear, focusing on the task. "I'll do my best." The palace doors opened to the central courtyard, where warriors and engineers moved swiftly, preparing defenses. Floating shields shimmered into place, energy barriers forming over key districts. Kilara led Ethan to a vantage point where he could observe the approach of the rogue ships. From this height, he could see their numbers and the silent precision of their movement. "They are unlike anything we usually face," Kilara said, her voice low but steady. "They exploit gaps in strategy, adapt to patterns. Conventional tactics may not be enough." Ethan considered this. On Earth, humans had often relied on improvisation and creativity to overcome technologically superior foes. Perhaps the same could apply here. He studied the terrain: floating gardens, open courtyards, narrow bridges connecting towers, and energy conduits running along the buildings. Every element could be used strategically. The first wave of the rogue faction arrived silently, their ships descending like shadows over the city. Some warriors engaged immediately, firing energy weapons that hummed through the air. Ethan stayed close to Kilara, observing patterns and searching for opportunities to act. When a small squad of enemies broke through a shield near a crowded market, chaos threatened. Civilians scattered, and some warriors struggled to contain the attackers. Ethan did not hesitate. He rushed forward, using the environment to his advantage. He ducked behind a hovering market stall, then leapt onto an energy conduit, letting it slide him across the courtyard. The rogue warriors were fast, but they had not anticipated his unpredictability. Using only his bare hands, Ethan disarmed one attacker by grabbing the wrist and twisting at the precise moment of a strike. Another lunged at him, but Ethan sidestepped, guiding the attacker into a soft landing among crates and barriers. Every movement was calculated, instinctive, and yet unpredictable, something the enemies could not anticipate. Kilara watched from nearby, her eyes widening in admiration. She moved alongside Ethan, her skill unmatched, yet she found herself synchronizing with him instinctively. Together they formed a silent partnership, he improvising, she guiding and responding. Each rogue warrior they faced was neutralized without lasting harm, their aggression redirected or contained. By mid-afternoon, the city had stabilized, but Ethan's work was far from over. The rogue faction's main ship hovered above the central palace, a massive vessel emitting waves of energy that disrupted shields and communication. Kilara turned to him. "We must disable that ship or the city will fall into chaos. You will need to think differently. This is where your ingenuity matters most." Ethan studied the ship, noticing its energy patterns. The shields pulsed rhythmically, and the vessel's engines emitted a faint, almost imperceptible vibration. He realized that the rogue ship's technology relied on a system of synchronized energy pulses. If he could disrupt the timing, it might weaken the defenses. Kilara nodded, understanding his thought process immediately. She pointed to an energy conduit running from the palace to the upper city. "You can reach the conduit. If you redirect the energy through it, you might create the disruption needed." Ethan hesitated only a moment, then acted. He leapt across buildings, sliding down energy conduits, climbing walls, and using his surroundings to gain momentum. His mind calculated angles, distances, and timing with the precision of a master tactician. Every step, every movement was improvised yet perfectly synchronized with the chaotic environment around him. When he reached the key conduit, he paused briefly, steadying his hands. He grasped the energy interface and rerouted the flow, redirecting pulses in a pattern he had mentally calculated. Sparks flew, light shimmered, and the rogue ship's shields flickered. Its engines groaned under the strain. Above him, Kilara engaged the ship directly. Using her agility and skill, she maneuvered across the upper platforms, deflecting attacks and maintaining pressure on the vessel. Together, their combined efforts created a situation the rogue faction had not anticipated. disruption from both inside and outside, from instinct and skill. The ship began to falter, energy patterns breaking down. Rogue warriors attempted to regroup, but Ethan's ingenuity continued to outmaneuver them. By the time the ship landed forcefully in a clearing outside the city, the threat had been neutralized. No lives were lost and the rogue warriors were contained safely. Kalara landed beside Ethan, brushing her armor lightly. She studied him with awe. "I have seen many warriors, many heroes," she said, voice steady but warm, "but never one who can adapt so quickly, think so clearly, and act so decisively without training." You are extraordinary." Ethan shook his head modestly. "I just used what I've learned. Observation, logic, and instinct. That's all I know." Kalara's eyes softened and she reached out, briefly touching his arm. "It is more than that. It is courage, heart, and a mind that refuses to be limited. Humans, perhaps that is your true gift. You remind me that strength is not always what we are taught to value." The citizens of Zithera emerged cautiously from their shelters, observing Ethan and Kalara. Whispers of admiration spread quickly. The human who had saved the city, the outsider who acted without weapons yet with extraordinary skill, had captured not only the hearts of the people but also the respect of their fiercest warriors. As evening fell, the city settled into quiet once more. The rogue faction had retreated, their threat neutralized, and the palace radiated calm and security once again. Kalara led Ethan to a quiet garden within the palace, where glowing plants reflected the fading sunlight. Small streams of water shimmered with soft light and strange birds perched silently observing. "You have changed my perspective today," Kalara said softly. "I have always admired warriors who train and perfect their skills, but you showed me that heart and ingenuity are as powerful as strength and technique. I am grateful you are here, Ethan." Ethan looked around at the serene garden, his chest still pounding from the day's events. He realized that his abilities, though simple by alien standards, had proven effective because they were unexpected. Humans relied on creativity, intuition, and resilience, qualities Zitherans respected but rarely encountered in one person. "I'm glad I could help," Ethan said, "and I think I've learned more about courage today than I ever did before." Kalara smiled faintly. "And I have learned something new about hope, that even when faced with overwhelming odds, one who acts with heart and mind together can inspire others to rise." She paused, her gaze lingering on him. "You are not like anyone I have met. That is why—" She hesitated, almost whispering, "I feel drawn to you." Ethan blinked, startled but not uncomfortable. He had sensed a bond forming between them, but hearing her words made it real. I feel the same," he admitted softly. For a moment silence surrounded them, broken only by the gentle flow of water and the quiet hum of the palace. Two beings from completely different worlds, standing together after a battle that had tested courage, ingenuity, and spirit, found a connection that neither expected but both understood. As night fell, Zithra glowed under the light of its twin moons. The city, once threatened, now rested in peace. And somewhere above, Kalara whispered again, almost to herself, "I wish he was my husband." Ethan, unaware of the exact words, felt a warmth in the air, a sense of admiration, respect, and something more profound. He knew that his journey on Zithera was far from over, but for the first time, he felt a sense of belonging in a world so different from his own. And though the rogue faction had been defeated, he understood that new challenges would come, each requiring creativity, courage, and heart. But now he had a partner in Kalara, whose skill, strength, and wisdom complemented his own humanity. Together, they had proven that strength could take many forms, and that even in the face of danger, the human spirit could shine brightest of all. The morning sun cast gentle light across the floating city of Zithera, its beams reflecting off crystalline towers and illuminating the streets below. For the first time in days, the city felt at peace. Traders reopened their stalls, children played along the bridges that connected buildings, and the quiet hum of flying vehicles filled the air. Yet for Ethan Carter, the calm was a new kind of challenge. After proving himself in the trials and helping defend the city, he now found himself navigating a different kind of territory, the palace and the mind of a warrior princess whose admiration had shifted into something more personal. Kalara met him outside his chamber, her armor gleaming faintly in the sunlight. She wore her usual expression of composed authority, but there was a softness in her eyes that Ethan had not seen before. "Ethan," she said, "today we will begin a new series of exercises. These are not trials of combat alone. They will test strategy, leadership, and your ability to influence others. You will be observed not only by me but by the Council of Elders." Ethan nodded, adjusting the strap of his backpack. "I'm ready. I want to do my best." The first exercise took place in the training arena, a vast space designed for both combat and strategic simulation. Holographic projections filled the area, depicting scenarios in which multiple groups needed guidance to resolve conflicts or achieve goals. Unlike previous trials, these simulations required more than instinct. They demanded empathy, reasoning, and leadership. Ethan studied the projections carefully. The holographic groups of Zitherans seemed confused, hesitant, and occasionally stubborn. Ethan realized that if he wanted to succeed, he could not rely on speed or force. Instead, he spoke clearly, offering guidance and suggestions, showing the groups how to work together. His human approach was simple but effective: patience, observation, and encouragement. Kelara observed silently from a balcony above. She noticed how Ethan did not issue commands but instead inspired cooperation. His gestures were subtle yet clear. His words were calm, yet they motivated action. Even the projections responded to his methods, moving efficiently and solving the challenges faster than expected. Kelara felt a renewed admiration for the human who could achieve so much with so little, relying only on his heart and mind. After the simulation ended, the Council of Elders approached. They were a group of wise, experienced Zitherans, whose judgments were rarely swayed by emotion. "This human," one elder said, "has demonstrated the ability to lead without dominance. His guidance is effective because it relies on clarity, empathy, and logic rather than power. He shows a rare quality in influencing others." Ethan smiled politely, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. "I only try to understand the situation and help people see the best way forward," he said simply. Kelara stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on his arm. "You see the value in collaboration," she said, her voice low and thoughtful. "That is why you are different from anyone I have ever known." The next exercise involved navigating the floating gardens of the palace, a series of terraces filled with exotic plants, energy streams, and delicate pathways. The task seemed simple: retrieve a set of crystalline flowers and deliver them to the top terrace. But the garden had hidden challenges. Certain paths were unstable, energy streams shifted, and some flowers were guarded by automated defense mechanisms. Ethan approached the first section carefully, observing the patterns of the moving platforms. He used his hands to balance, his feet precise, and his mind focused on timing. When an automated guardian emerged to block his path, he studied its motion. Instead of attacking it, he anticipated its next step, moving with the rhythm of its actions to slip past unnoticed. Kelara followed from above, impressed. "He does not fight for victory or pride," she whispered to herself. "He acts with awareness, patience, and care." Ethan reached the top terrace after a careful climb and retrieved the crystalline flowers. The elders applauded, noting how he combined intelligence, creativity, and composure to succeed. Kelara stepped forward, smiling faintly. "You have shown that strength is not only physical. It is courage, patience, and the ability to adapt." Ethan felt a warmth in her words. He had learned a lot about strategy and leadership. Yet Kelara seemed to value something deeper: the choices he made, the way he treated others, and the way he approached challenges without arrogance. Later, Kelara invited him to explore the city. As they walked along floating bridges and quiet streets, she spoke of her world, the history of Zithera, the challenges her people faced, and the importance of honor, courage, and wisdom. Ethan listened, absorbing every detail. He found himself comparing their ways with human experiences, noticing similarities and differences. He shared stories from Earth, tales of ingenuity, teamwork, and resilience. Kelara laughed softly at his anecdotes, her eyes shining. "Your stories are different. Yet I see how your people have survived, thrived, and inspired one another. It is remarkable how much the heart and mind can achieve when combined." As the day passed, Ethan noticed that his presence had begun to influence those around him. Young warriors observed him, adopting his methods of observation and adaptation. Engineers consulted him on problem-solving, impressed by the simplicity and effectiveness of his solutions. Even the Council of Elders sought his perspective on matters of strategy and diplomacy. Kalara noticed these subtle changes, a sense of pride welling in her chest. Ethan was not just succeeding in tasks, he was shaping Zitharan thought in ways she had not anticipated. His human perspective was refreshing, challenging rigid traditions without disrespect, and inspiring her people to consider new approaches. As evening fell, the palace gardens glowed under soft bioluminescent lights. Ethan and Kalara walked together, their conversation quiet but meaningful. "You have made a difference today," Kalara said softly. "Not by force, not by dominance, but by showing what courage and intelligence can accomplish. I admire you more than I can say." Ethan looked at her, feeling a deep connection he had not expected. "I'm grateful for your trust," he replied. "I came here as an outsider, but I've learned that understanding and respect can bridge worlds. I've learned more from your people than I could have imagined." Kalara smiled, reaching out to touch his hand briefly. "You are not like anyone I have ever met, and perhaps that is why I feel drawn to you. You remind me that strength is not only skill or training, it is heart, courage, and thought. That is why I—" She paused, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wish you were mine, in a way I cannot yet fully explain." Ethan felt a warmth in her words that he had not experienced before. He realized that his journey on Zithara had grown beyond trials and battles. It was now about connection, understanding, and the potential to inspire and learn. He smiled, softly replying, "I feel the same, and I hope to continue learning from you and your people for as long as I am here." The night deepened, the city bathed in silver light. Citizens moved quietly through streets that once carried the tension of conflict, but now echoed peace. Ethan and Kalara stood on a balcony overlooking the city, silent in mutual understanding. They had faced trials, threats, and challenges, yet what remained was a shared respect, admiration, and perhaps the beginnings of something more profound. Ethan reflected on how far he had come, from a human explorer stepping onto an alien world to someone influencing thought, strategy, and leadership among Zitharans. His journey had been extraordinary. He realized that courage, adaptability, and kindness could inspire across worlds. Kalara, too, understood that strength and leadership were not confined to warriors trained from birth. A human with simple tools and a determined heart had shown her a new perspective. In the quiet of the palace garden, surrounded by glowing plants and gentle streams, they shared a moment of mutual respect and unspoken understanding. Kalara whispered once more, almost to herself, "I wish he was my husband." Ethan, though unaware of the exact words, felt the sentiment. The connection between them was undeniable. He knew that challenges lay ahead. Zithara was a world of beauty, but also of responsibility and danger. Yet he no longer felt like an outsider. He felt part of something greater, a journey that combined courage, heart, and the human spirit with the wisdom and strength of an alien world. As they walked back toward the palace, side by side, Ethan realized that his presence on Zithara was changing more than just the city or the people. It was changing him, shaping his understanding of courage, leadership, and connection. And for Kalara, the human who had shown bravery, ingenuity, and heart, was more than a hero. He was someone who had touched her in ways she could not yet fully articulate, someone she could not forget. The night passed peacefully, but both knew that new adventures awaited. Challenges would come, requiring not only skill but heart, intelligence, and courage. Together, Ethan and Kalara would face them. And in that partnership, a bond was forming that neither could ignore. A bond that bridged worlds and celebrated the very best qualities of humanity and Zitharan spirit. The morning sun rose over Zithara, painting the floating city in shades of gold and silver. After the recent challenges, the palace and the streets were alive with a renewed sense of calm. Citizens moved with confidence, children laughed as they played on floating bridges, and traders arranged their goods in bright, organized stalls. Yet beneath this peaceful surface, Kalara and her advisors were aware that the rogue faction had not disappeared entirely. Their leader, a cunning strategist, still plotted in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Ethan Carter, standing beside Kalara on a high balcony, observed the city below. He had become familiar with the rhythms of Zithara, the sounds, the movements, and the subtle flow of energy that connected the city's people and structures. Today, he knew, would be a test not only of courage but of ingenuity, leadership, and the bonds he had begun to form with the people and, most importantly, with Kalara. Kalara turned to him, her armor catching the sunlight in a soft glint. "The rogue faction has been gathering forces quietly," she said. "We expect an attack within hours. Our warriors are prepared, but I want you beside me, not just to fight but to help devise a strategy. Your approach yesterday showed me the strength of human intuition and adaptability. Today we will need both." Ethan nodded. "I'll do whatever I can." He could feel the weight of responsibility, but also the thrill of facing a challenge where his unique perspective could make a difference. They moved quickly through the palace corridors, joined by the Council of Elders and senior warriors. Holographic displays projected the positions of the rogue fleet, revealing small, fast-moving ships converging on Zithera from multiple directions. Kalara's people were strong, but the attackers relied on speed, deception, and unpredictability. Ethan studied the projections, noting patterns in the enemy approach. He could see how they adjusted their formations in response to the city's defenses. "They are clever," Ethan said thoughtfully, "but predictable in their unpredictability. Their attacks follow a rhythm, even if it's irregular. If we can anticipate it, we can create a disruption that will force them to retreat." Kalara raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Ethan stepped closer to the display. "See these 3 small squadrons? They move in alternating bursts. If we can redirect energy flows from the city's conduits, we can create interference at key moments. It won't destroy them, but it will throw off their timing and coordination." Kalara considered his suggestion. "It is unconventional," she said slowly, "but your human perspective may be what we need." Together they coordinated the defense. Ethan suggested positioning small teams in key areas, not to fight directly, but to guide the flow of the enemy toward zones where the energy disruptions could be most effective. Kalara gave precise orders, and her warriors moved with confidence, trusting both the humans' insight and their princess's leadership. As the rogue fleet approached, the first skirmishes began. Small ships darted through the sky, energy beams cutting across the city. Ethan and Kalara moved along the upper platforms, directing teams and adjusting plans in real time. Whenever a rogue squadron tried to exploit a gap, Ethan anticipated their movements, redirecting energy flows or guiding defenders to intercept. His actions were swift and subtle, relying on observation, timing, and improvisation rather than brute force. Kalara fought alongside him when necessary, her movements precise, deflecting attacks and ensuring the city's key structures remained protected. She was impressed by how Ethan remained calm amidst the chaos, using his mind to anticipate patterns rather than reacting impulsively. His unpredictability frustrated the enemy, and for the first time, they began to falter. A critical moment arrived when a large rogue ship attempted to breach the city's central energy core, which powered both defensive shields and vital city functions. Warriors rushed to defend it, but the enemy's speed was overwhelming. Ethan quickly assessed the situation. Using his understanding of timing and energy flows, he directed a conduit to channel excess energy into a temporary shield around the core, deflecting the incoming attacks. The rogue ship's strike failed, and its energy systems were temporarily overloaded. Kalara watched, her admiration deepening. "You do not fight like anyone I have ever seen," she whispered, moving to his side. "You think, adapt, and act with a clarity that changes the outcome without needing to overpower. That is extraordinary." Ethan felt a mixture of pride and humility. "I'm just using what I know," he replied. "Observing, thinking, and acting. That's all I've ever done." The rogue fleet attempted to regroup, but Ethan and Kalara's combined strategy proved too effective. By using both the city's infrastructure and the defenders' skills creatively, they disrupted the attackers' rhythm repeatedly. Confused and frustrated, the rogue fleet finally retreated, unable to maintain coordination or achieve their goal. Zithera's citizens cheered as the sky cleared, witnessing the retreat of a force they had feared might overpower them. Kalara and Ethan stood together, overlooking the city. The battle had been won, not by destruction but by intelligence, courage, and collaboration. Warriors around them celebrated, but the quiet admiration in their eyes spoke volumes. They had witnessed something remarkable, a human who, without training or technology, had inspired, guided, and helped secure the city's safety. The Council of Elders approached, their expressions solemn but approving. Ethan Carter once said, "Your actions today have demonstrated qualities we value above all: courage, wisdom, and adaptability. You have shown that strength is not only physical, Your mind and heart have saved Zithra. Ethan bowed slightly, humbled. I only did what I thought was right. I am grateful for your trust. Kalara stepped closer, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. You have changed how we see not just courage, but the potential of humanity, she said softly. Even among the stars, the human spirit shines brightly, and you are extraordinary. The city celebrated long into the night. Floating gardens glowed under soft lights. Streams reflected the twin moons, and the air was filled with the hum of peaceful energy. Citizens moved freely, sharing stories of the human who had helped save their home. Young warriors watched Ethan with awe, eager to learn from his approach. Engineers consulted him about problem-solving, curious about the logic behind his decisions. Even the elders sought his advice on matters of strategy and leadership. Kalara guided Ethan to a quiet terrace above the central plaza, away from the crowds. The air was cool, carrying the scent of glowing plants and gentle water streams. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride, admiration, and something deeper. Ethan, she said softly, today you did not just protect our city. You inspired our people. You reminded us that courage, creativity, and heart matter as much as strength and skill. You are remarkable in every way. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth in her words. I am glad I could help. I have learned so much from your people and from you. You have taught me courage, strategy, and leadership in ways I could never have imagined. Kalara's eyes softened, her gaze holding his. And you have shown me something I did not know I needed to see. That even an outsider can bring hope, can inspire, and can change the way we think. You are human, yet your spirit is universal. Ethan felt a deep connection, stronger than anything he had experienced on Earth. Kalara, he said quietly, I feel that too, and I hope to continue learning, growing, and helping here with you, for as long as I am welcome. Kalara smiled, placing her hand on his. You are more than welcome. You have become part of Zithra, not just as a hero, but as someone who has touched hearts and minds. And She paused, her voice barely above a whisper. I wish you were my husband. Ethan's heart swelled with emotion. He had come to Zithra as a human explorer, seeking knowledge and adventure. He had faced trials, danger, and uncertainty. Yet in this moment he realized that he had found more than courage, more than respect. He had found connection, admiration, and the beginnings of love. The night stretched over the city. Stars reflected in the floating structures, and the twin moons bathed Zithra in silver light. Citizens slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that their city was safe. And atop a terrace in the heart of the palace, Ethan and Kalara stood together, knowing that their bond, forged through courage, ingenuity, and shared experiences, would endure. Ethan looked out over the city and thought of the journey ahead. Challenges would come as they always did, but he felt ready. He had proven that humanity's creativity, resilience, and heart could inspire even in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. And with Kalara by his side, guiding, supporting, and sharing his vision, there was no limit to what they could achieve together. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of heroism, not just fighting battles, but inspiring, protecting, and connecting. And in Kalara's eyes, he saw that same understanding reflected back at him. The city of Zithra slept, bathed in light and hope. Two worlds had come together, human and Zithran, to face challenges, grow, and discover that courage and heart could overcome any obstacle. And in the quiet of the palace, Kalara whispered one final time, her voice carrying across the terrace, I wish he was my husband. Ethan smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning. The future held countless adventures,